General Brooks, a question for you from the participants. Would an end of war declaration, either Korean or involving the U.S., create political or diplomatic pressure to end the UNC?
Well, yes, it will. It creates a new dynamic. And some may assume that an end of war declaration equals an end of UN command. I think that that's a shallow thought. It might, but I don't believe that's a simultaneous event, that with declaration of end of hostilities or declaration of peace, that suddenly UN command ends. I've already mentioned the important roles of some organization, ideally a multinational organization, engaging in the actions that create the conditions of peace. In 2018, we engaged in dialogue with the South Korean armed forces, who were in direct communication with the North Korean People's Army, on trying to find ways to diffuse tension, to make room for dialogue to reemerge, as we saw some changes, perhaps the effect of deterrence in 2017, but nevertheless a change that occurred at the beginning of 2018 and opened the door to a season of symmetry. But among those diplomatic actions were also military actions to lower tension. And it resulted in the comprehensive military agreement that is still in effect, that has added to the quality of the armistice. Distances are now greater than the initially established armistice. No-fly areas are larger than they were and further from the opposing side, so that there's less chance of an accident. Some of the guard posts have been demilitarized. So especially the ones that were in close proximity, less than 1 kilometer, where incidents could easily happen. And even in Panmunjom, which had become well known as the standoff area, physically standing off just feet away from one another. Many of the military conditions inside of there have been reduced. So there's going to be some tension in this recognition of, well, we've got peace now. Didn't you say that's what the armistice was awaiting and what UN command was waiting? And that's true. But the role of establishing peace includes significant military activity. And someone has to be deputized with doing that. And of course, that would be the belligerents themselves, if you want to use that original term. So the North Korean People's Army, South Korean Armed Forces, which is nearly the entirety of the line of defense, and the US forces that remain present there as well. There would have to be some military adjustments that come with that. It's not instantaneous. So Vince Brooks's opinion is the role of UN command remains one about introducing conditions of peace. And at some point in time, it could be disestablished, but that should be a very deliberate decision. Again, in my opinion, it would be at least among the 3 countries involved, perhaps even China, which was an original signatory to the document. And it might need to go back to the United Nations Security Council, carried in by the United States. I used the metaphor of a birth mother who gives up the child for adoption very quickly after birth. And the child is raised by another mother for a period of time. And then both of them have gotten old, and so has the child. The child is now 70 years old, and that's UN command. But the relationship may still need to go back to its origins in order to stand it down. So these are considerations that ought to be opened now and into the future as the potential of peace is out there. We ought to have a plan internationally on how that's going to be done. And I would submit to you that that's lacking at the present time.